I'm a little rusty on it.
I'll hum it for you.
How is everyone doing? All right. Second. All right, cool. So, how's everyone doing? We can put this up here, and then we do the intro, and then, okay, I think we're good. Doing a lot of house chores today. Doing a lot of house chores today. What's it called? So very frazzled here at the beginning, because just what happens when you spend the day doing house chores. Is there a thing to prop? Oh my god, there is. Ooh, there are things to prop this up. Okay, I didn't even know that until now. Cool, fantastic. All right, let's do the intro. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you might be watching this. My name is Josh, and welcome to my channel. And here we talk news, we talk politics, we talk current events. Normally we also do 3 hours of a show. Tonight we're only doing 2. My partner's not feeling well, so they need to get some well-deserved rest, and I do this from our bedroom. But otherwise, also, just like I said, the whole day running around doing a bunch of stuff, so didn't really get to like sit down and eat dinner and do all that until a little bit later. But we move on. Let's go over what we got for today. So I want to take a look at the next couple of weeks of what we're going to. I just noticed, is that camera level? That looks. Is that camera level? Are you level, camera? That feels better. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that looks a lot more level. Anyway, what was I saying? Right. I want to go over an article kind of outlining the next couple of weeks of Supreme Court decisions. Kind of following up with yesterday's show. After that, I want to take a quick stop in the House of Representatives. It looks like Kevin McCarthy's facing a bit of, pushback from his party members. Along with, if we have time, I want to look over this article from Politico on kind of where how Wisconsin has shifted a little bit over the last couple of years. It's a long one, so I don't know if we'll get to it. But, if we can do so in the allotted time, that'd be cool. And then after that, we'll watch that Rand Paul video from yesterday. I want to take a look. I don't think we're actually going to do the CNN one. For RFK, just because I don't really think we need, we're gonna, for RFK, I want to go over his interview with Crystal and Sagar about 2 weeks ago over on Breaking Points, because they had like specific questions, and I'm really curious about specific topics for him. And then we'll slide right into Tim Pool and the Jordan Peterson section. Actually, let's just do the 2 articles. And we'll just kind of move kind of briskly through. I told you. Misa. Now, what did I say? In or out? In or out, people. In or out. One or the other. Okay. Anyway, let's get on with it, shall we? There we go. Let's see. Here are the major Supreme Court decisions that we're still waiting for this term. The U.S. Supreme Court has yet to issue opinions in 27 cases that it heard this term and has about 4 weeks left to release them. Opinions usually are scheduled for Thursday. But with time running out, the course will likely add days in which it will release its decisions. Here are the ones that NPR is watching. Affirmative action. Students for fair admission versus Harvard, and Students for Fair Admission versus University of North Carolina. At issue are affirmative action programs at the University of North Carolina, which until the 1950s did not admit black students. Jesus. And Harvard University, which was the model for the Supreme Court's 1978 decision, declaring that colleges and universities may consider race as one of many factors, from the applicant's geographical and family background to their special talents in science, math, athletics, and even whether the applicant is the child of the school's alumni. The 2 cases overlap. Hey, go. What are you doing? Go. What are you? Go away. Go away. Jesus. 2 cases overlap because UNC is a state school. The question is whether its affirmative action program violates the 14th Amendment's guarantee to equal protection of the law. And even though Harvard is a private institution, it still is covered by federal anti-discrimination laws because it accepts federal money for a wide variety of programs. The cases were argued last October. Leaves the right to strike. Unions are. Can you believe this headline? Unions are relieved and the Supreme Court leaves the right to strike intact. Like, Jesus. What is this case? Students for fair admission. Let's take a look and see if we can find some background on this. Students. Fair. Oh God. Okay. For fair admission. It's V Harbor. Let's see. Full video. No. Discussion. No. Just give me a quick blurb here. Lawsuit. This is 4 years ago. Let's see. Like, I don't want to watch college admissions. Okay, let's see. Affirmative action college challenges the Supreme Court.
At the Supreme Court, a cultural crossroads.
We know that racism exists.
Today, race as a factor in college admissions is on
Right.
the line.
I think it definitely needs to come to an end.
Decades of legal precedent for affirmative action in higher education could fall, potentially reducing the number of Black and Latino students at elite schools. Over a pair of cases challenging race-conscious admissions policies at Harvard and the University of North Carolina. Today, conservative Justice Clarence Thomas voiced his skepticism.
What a piece of
I've
shit.
heard the word diversity quite a few times, and I don't have a clue what it means.
The 3 liberal
Well, then why the fuck are you presiding over it if you still don't know what it... What a fucking idiot, man.
justices defended affirmative action for making
Like, Clarence Thomas, one of the most powerful people in this country, doesn't understand what diversity is. It's one thing when normal people don't. It's another when somebody who holds this much power doesn't.
Solutions look more like America during 5 hours of arguments.
Race alone doesn't account for why someone's admitted or not.
Cecilia Polanco graduated from UNC in 2016 and says race remains
Would
an
have a
important
fucking
consideration
gamer
to level the playing field.
I think we need
keyboard.
affirmative action because it will help make spaces more diverse. It will make, and that's better for everyone.
The conservative group behind these cases argues that
Now keep in mind, when she says better for everyone, she means better for non-white people who didn't used to get accepted to college because of their race or ethnicity. That's, there are going to be people at the end of the day who will say like, oh, but this is hurting like white students, to which it's like, in what way? They've always had the ability to go to college. They've always had the ability to go get higher educations. It really only hurts like probably like a very minute percentage. We're talking like the edges. Like if there are 2 kids that would get in and you go with like the black student, it's not like, the white student has no other options for college. They still have every other institution they can go to and get a fair shake.
using race in admissions discriminates against other students, namely Asian Americans, and that violates federal law and the Constitution's Equal Protection Clause.
This is a civil rights issue of Asians, and this is discrimination against Asians.
Around the country, 9 states have already ended affirmative action for school admissions. The court has a conservative supermajority with a 6-3 advantage and has shown...
I mean, look, they're going to get rid of it. Let's see. Action didn't exist. Supreme Court pretended. Yeah, I would be curious to hear some of the argument. Let's see. Hope the Supreme Court strikes down affirmative action in college. This is 9 minutes. Supreme Court takes a closer look. Affirmative action in college admissions. Let's take a look. It's like 5 minutes. I just want something concise.
We have
talked so much the last couple of days about the issue of abortion in the Supreme Court, but there's another case right now that's getting national attention. It examines whether or not colleges can continue to consider race as part of their admissions decisions, obviously known as affirmative action. Some claim it has become unfair. Let's bring in my guest tonight, Young Voices contributor Nietzsche Arnold.
So on the premise alone, let's think about this. Should colleges be considering race in terms of college admissions? Well, if we think about kind of the history of college admissions in this country, there was a, while not, I think, on the books or official position on, the racial makeup of colleges, there was a general bias against, we'll say, just to pick a, the easy group here, against African Americans in this country seeking higher educations. It's why we have HBCUs. It's why, a lot of Black people in this country have had to turn to in-group solutions for these kinds of problems. I'm thinking, when I say that, I'm thinking things like Black Wall Street. When Black citizens aren't given the same kind of treatment by, banks or loan officers to start businesses, it falls on kind of the Black community and any kind of Black wealth to then reinforce, or at the very least, plug some of those holes. And the same goes for education. Historically, Black colleges exist because there was a lack of acceptance for Black students into higher education options. At the end of the day, this is we created an infrastructure, a system to address a inequality between two groups. Now, because I believe it was the 1970s when some of this was put into place a little bit more concretely. But when we talk about today, fast forward to today, let's take a look. Let's see if we can find some statistics here. Diversity colleges. Let's go talk colleges. Can I get stats actually? Let's see. If we're going based on, I don't know if I want Peterson, University and College Designers Operation, U.S. News and World. Can I get, what does McKinsey say? I'm actually kind of curious. McKinsey, not my favorite, oh my God. No. Save my preferences, you assholes. Okay, let's see. No, don't care. Okay. Oh, I might need to turn this to this. I want to see. Public. Most institutions have not simultaneously achieved representational parity for first-time students and at least average completion rates. Okay. Instructional staff. Institutional. Okay. Well, that feels fucking useless. Let's see. Is there like a study? Let's see. Oh my God, what the hell? Okay. Study, sorry. Oh wait, was that Google Scholar actually? Statistics. What did I do to get Scholar? What the fuck? No, that actually might be useful. Well, is it up here? I don't know. I want to, let's see. College campuses are becoming more diverse, but how much do students from different backgrounds actually interact? Okay, let's see. Okay, let's see. When 6-year-old Ruby Bridges walked through the doors of her Louisiana elementary school in 1960, she made history as the first Black student. Right. Recent studies, Stevens and her collaborators sought to fill that gap by exploring the diversity of people's actual interactions. I'm not that interested in that. Why is diversity important in college experience? I want to find some good numbers. Great value colleges. Southern Nazarene. Insider fact. Forbes. New study provides evidence that diversity enhances higher education outcomes. Oh my fucking God. No, I'm not disabling my ad blocker. You can kiss my ass. American Psychological Institute, Journal of Diversity in Higher Education. Original. Ooh, here we go. American Psychological. Yeah, that sounds good. Let's take a look. We also interested in the work that explores. God damn it. Let's see. Submission. Practice. God damn it. Tables. Do we have some tables? Ooh. Do we have some figures? This feels more like, okay, that feels more like, can I get, yeah, give me, is there like some graphs maybe? God damn it. It's just a bunch of pictures of fashionable young people of varying races. Okay, fine. We'll go with this, even though I don't love white students. Made up nearly half of the students' population in 2018. Figures dropped to 42% out of 2022. Hispanic and were second largest. Like, guys, 42% white, 17.4% Hispanic Latino, 10% black, 5% like, good grace. Private nonprofit, 4-year in universities were the least diverse institutions. 40% students were white, 30% students were black, indigenous, or people of color. 21% did not identify. So, yeah. Public schools, 46% were white. What was the other number? 47. Wow, 1% down. 38% were BIPOC and 16 did not identify. A public 2-year, 38% white, and a public 2-year schools, 29%. Yeah, like the problem I find at least is that I don't get the sense that taking away affirmative action is going to improve the attendance numbers of any of these other groups. And it'll be interesting to see how much this white percentage, if it goes up or it goes down. If it goes down, then they might have an argument here, but I'm very, very skeptical to think that if you take away the ability for schools to identify black students and recruit them, that they will do so. I am skeptical of that. But, you know, anyway, we'll kind of see how that turns out. Voting Rights Act, at issue in Alabama's congressional redistricting plan adopted by a Republican state legislator after the 2020 census. More than a quarter of the state's population is African American. But in only 1 of 7 districts do minority voters have a realistic chance of electing the candidate of their choice. Black voters are either concentrated in that district, so they are a supermajority. They are a supermajority there, or spread out across the remaining 6 districts, so that their voting power is diluted. It's a practice known as packing and cracking. Obviously, this is gerrymandering. Also, in January 2022, a 3-judge federal court panel ruled unanimously that Alabama could and should have created 2 compact congressional districts with a majority or close to a majority of black voters. 2 districts instead of just 1. 2 of the judges on the panel were Trump appointees, a 3rd Clinton appointee. The state appealed to the Supreme Court, which by 5-4 voted by a 5-4 vote blocked the lower court ruling, which ordered a new map for the 2022 election. Then 9 months away, that was too much for Chief Justice John Roberts, a longtime critic of the Voting Rights Act, but who this time dissented along with the court's 3 liberals. He said he could find no apparent errors in the way the lower court applied existing precedents. What he didn't say was whether the court should revisit some of those precedents. The case was argued in October. Okay. This will be interesting to see. That'll be interesting to see. Indian Child Welfare Act. A case pitted several prospective and adoptive parents and the state of Texas against the Indian Child Welfare Act, a federal law aimed at preventing Native American children from being separated from their extended families and their tribes. Texas and several families who are adopting American Indian children challenged the law in court. They contended it amounts to an unconstitutional racial preference and that the federal law impermissibly intrudes on state autonomy. The case was argued in November. Okay, so this one's kind of interesting. Okay, So you have a program here that essentially keeps Native American kids from being adopted out of their tribes and out of their, family units, especially even extended families, and into American families. Now, the interesting part about this is keep in mind, like, indigenous, indigenous groups are not are looked upon as far as as far as I'm aware, from a legal standpoint, as kind of sovereign nations to a degree. So I do think this would definitely fall under the federal government's jurisdiction. I can't imagine why it's the same reason why Texas can't negotiate border policy with Mexico to a certain extent. Because at the end of the day, the border, as even if the border is on the Texas state lines, it is property and it is managed by the federal government. So this kind of sounds like a pretty obvious, this is gonna, this to me is pretty obvious that no, this is a federal case. This falls under federal purview. It's also a bit sussy. People, I don't have let's see, what is it? Halen versus Brackeen. Let's take a look. Oh boy, Brackeen. Take a look. Oh my God, we do not have an hour, guys. Just give me under 4 minutes. How an evangelical group SCOTUS case could affect. Oh, hit me with it. What is this on? Oh, this is on Now This too. Fuck these guys. This used to be fucking SourceFed.
So the Brackeens are a white couple living in Texas.
Jesus.
And based on public statements they've made and blog posts the wife made, for religious reasons, they feel it's very important that they adopt Indian children. And they've elected to do so.
Dude, that's fucking weird.
The Indian Child Welfare
What fucking
Act
groomers?
does allow for tribes to intervene and to have a say in what happens to their children.
The Cherokee attorney whose work focuses on protecting the rights of indigenous people.
The Indian Child Welfare Act is a law that Congress passed in 1978 that creates procedural safeguards to protect the lives, safety, and welfare of Native.
That there is no resource that is more vital to the continuing existence and integrity of Indian tribes than their children, and that the United States has a direct interest as trustee in protecting Indian children who are members of or are eligible for membership in an Indian tribe.
Children, so that if an Indian child is being taken from his or her their home for any reason, we make sure that that child, the priorities are that child ends up with his or her family first. And we only place Indian children with complete strangers if there aren't any other healthy, good options available within that child's family or tribal nation or community.
Now, the big question I have is are these kids that are in the United States, within the bounds of the United States, who have family in Indian nation? If that's true, then or Native American. Did she say Indian nation? Am I crazy? You get what I mean. If these kids have family back on indigenous land, then that would make if there was some kind of European, if there was a I don't know, if there was a British kid whose parents died in a car crash while they're here, they live in the States, it would make sense that, custody, we should probably try to get them back to their grandparents or maybe their uncles or something, even if they're in the UK or something. That seems like kind of the case here. I don't, without knowing
really the
deep specifics
really
of the case.
Any child, but it was really important, and it still is important for Indian children because our kids are targeted by the adoption industry and by states who have.
From the beginning of the colonial period, Native American children were particularly vulnerable to removal by colonizers. Captured children might be sold into slavery, forced to become religious novitiates. I don't fucking know what that word is. Made to perform labor or adopted as family members by Euro-Americans. Although some undoubtedly did well under their new circumstances, many suffered. In some senses, the 19th century practice of forcing children to attend boarding school was a continuation of these early practices. Oh yeah, we've heard about that in Canada. Canada has like a really dark fucking history of that too. Before the 20th century, social welfare programs were, for the most part, the domain of charities, particularly of religious charities. By the mid 20th century, however, governmental institutions had surpassed charities as the dominant instruments of public well-being, which they should, in my opinion. As with other forms of Northern American civic authority, most responsibilities related to social welfare were assigned to state and provincial government, which in turn developed formidable child welfare bureaucracies. These were responsible for intervening in cases of child neglect or abuse, although caseworkers often tried to maintain the integrity of the family, children living in dangerous circumstances.
Prejudice and bias against Native families and Native nations. When that process
Who can adopt a Native American child? A Texas, okay.
were very upset, but ultimately that process did not result in them losing the child they wanted to adopt. They actually filed their lawsuit challenging the constitutionality of ICWA after they knew they were getting to adopt the kid that they wanted to adopt.
Indian Child Welfare Act. Of course it's a fucking, let's see. AI study by the Centers of American Indian and Alaska Native Health considered transracial adoptions. Adoptees, American Indian, that's what they are. Okay, adoptees were more likely than expected under the null hypothesis to self-report alcohol addiction, alcohol recovery, drug addiction, drug recovery, self-assessed eating disorder diagnosis, self-harm, There were no significant decisions for depression. Okay. Considered transracial adoptions. Interesting. As a contributing factor to why indigenous adoptees are more prone to substance abuse and mental than white adoptees.
I'd say,
as a child of adoption, I can't actually speak to this, but I will say there is a real cognitive dissonance that you, especially if you are of a different ethnic, especially racial group than your adopted family, there is a lot of cognitive dissonance associated with that. There's a lot of, I think, anxiety over one's identity and where one fits into not just broader society, but also just kind of where you fit in amongst people that you're supposed to fit into. Adoption is a really, really complex issue, and the mental health of adoptees is also a very complex one. I don't want to paint any kind of broad brush or anything, but I do think that there is a relationship, I think, between being adopted from a different race and having, at the very least, notable, if not significant, significantly different mental health outcomes. I can absolutely see that, because when people can look immediately at you and at your parents and go, there's a disconnect here, whether even when you're very secure in your family, that disconnect is kind of always there to a degree, and it's always a factor in how you are seen in the group. Like, as a small example, and again, I don't have this problem, luckily. I grew up pretty secure in my position in my family, but growing up, or even as an adult, I go back and I look at family photos. I stick out so much in my family because I'm the only person with this much melanin, quite frankly. And there's just aspects of that like are tough to overcome for some people. Not to say it's universal, but I do think it's at the very least not uncommon from what I've seen.
One of the things I hear most often is just this aching, this grief, this longing to figure out who you are. I think as Native people,
exactly
as American Indians, as citizens of tribal nations, we have this connection to something before the United States, something that's been here on this land since time immemorial. I think disconnecting us as citizens of tribal nations from our language, from our culture, it's just a continuation of the genocide that the United States sought to accomplish in the 1700s and 1800s, but couldn't.
And keep in mind also, if you're like a child of, if you're one of these kids, you are an avatar or at the very least, maybe not an avatar. You are like ground zero victim for all of this, and you might not even know it until you get older and have to reckon with that. Even if your parents are completely nice people, you had a good life, all the rest of this stuff, you eventually kind of have to reckon with the fact that like the system in which you've gotten to where you're at under was not one built for your benefit whatsoever. You are, there's a certain amount of I think of a crisis in that. It's tough. Nagel says she's concerned that overturning the EQA could impact indigenous communities at large. Absolutely. The ability for people to just,
a
adopt
nation's children,
yeah.
you'll eradicate that nation, because without any children, you literally do not have a nation anymore. And the folks who are fighting ICWA understand that.
Oh, reportedly, whoa. Go back. God damn it. My mouse.
I mean, the
My mouse.
youth at Standing Rock,
Wake up.
the tribal leaders showed up, but at first it was
Wake up,
the
mouse.
youth. It was kids. Understand that.
The Brackens and their co-defendants are reportedly being represented pro bono in this case. So that's how you know. Like, this is a case where it's like tribal nation versus these two parents and somebody who's paying for their defense. Somebody who has money to pay for their defense. Or at the very least, well, I guess if it's pro bono, then the lawyer isn't taking any money up front, which means they are ideologically motivated to agree. By the law firm Gibson Dunn, which has a history of representing big oil corporations. Ooh, I wonder why. Why would big oil at all want to chip away at the sovereignty of Indian nations and the members of those? Keep in mind, like, a lot of these tribes are still on land that oil companies would like to drill on, that private industry would like to build on. These people, and like the thing that they hate more than anything is the fact that that tribal nations are not part of the United States, meaning that Joe Biden or like any governmental body does not have the ability to simply hand out zoning contracts and allow them to do what they want. They don't have a legal recourse or a legal avenue to move these people through the same kinds of structures. So they seize on opportunities like this. God, only the whitest people ever. In cases against
the youth at Standing Rock, the tribal leaders showed up, but at first it was the youth. It was kids, children. It was children who are protected by ICWA who stood up and said no to that pipeline because they had relatives who were buried in the path of that pipeline. And the pipeline didn't like that, right? But if you can eliminate those nations, if those nations
and it's not even,
exist,
and keep in mind, it's not even like it's not that they dislike indigenous people. It's that indigenous people are in the way of profits. That's all it is. It's like part of it is going to are there racists? Probably. There is absolutely a racial element to this, I'm sure. But if we're talking like strictly on the surface level, this is capital versus people. That's all this breaks down to. This is moneyed interest, people who want to make money and are willing to destroy an entire community. Whether it's yours in East Palestine, in Ohio, or whether it's these tribal nations. It doesn't matter. They need you to get the fuck out of their way to make profits.
Then I think oil and gas understands there's a lot more profit to be had.
As of November 7th, 2022, representatives from 497 tribes have come together to defend the ICWA in the Supreme Court. Jesus Christ. That's fucking wild. Like, that's actually fucking wild. We'll see. Okay, so we have to keep in mind that the Supreme Court is very, this makeup of the Supreme Court is very pro-business centered. They're very interested in the rights of business owners and private ownership and everything else, and private industry, I should say. So I'm interested to see, because this is pretty abstract. This is obviously something that, big oil and, these what's the word, these oil extractors. This is something that they want. This is something that they are very, very financially interested in backing. The real question is if this is the vehicle that the Supreme Court is willing to engage with, to further their goals of drilling on indigenous land. We'll kind of have to see. This one's kind of a toss-up to me, just because the optics of it look pretty bad. And also, I think this is really clear that this is a federal issue, not a state issue. So the idea that, the ICWA laws is intruding on Texas state law is complete horseshit. I don't think that's a very strong argument, but we'll have to see. Let's see. What do we got? Sorry. Fuck Christ. From my state here in Colorado, we get 303 Creative versus Alenis. The case pits two constitutional principles against each other. On one side are laws that guarantee same-sex couples equal access to all businesses that offer their services to the public. On the other are business owners who see themselves as artists and don't want to use their talents to express a message that they don't believe in. The plaintiff in the case is a Colorado web designer who argues that Colorado public accommodations laws prevents her from doing what she wants to do most, custom web designs for weddings. The reason she believes that marriage should only be between a man and a woman. The case was argued December 6th. All right, can we find like an equivalent video? 303 Creative. 303 Creative. Let's take a look.
When my clients come to 303 Creative, what they can expect.
Alliance Defending Freedom. Where have I heard this name before? Let's take a look. ADF. Oh, yep. I've definitely heard this before. Yep. Gospel and advocating for religious. No. Hit me with it. ADF exists to keep the doors open for the gospel, advocating for religious liberty and religious liberty, the sanctity of human life, freedom of speech, parental rights, and marriage and family. Dipshits, it's marriage and family. You don't need two ands, you dumb fuck. Yep, of course. Yep.
Is someone who
Had a
cares
feeling.
and has a passion for their business as
Let's see this propaganda.
Each and every one of my projects is a reflection of me.
Of your bigotry?
Lori works
Gotcha.
with everyone, including those who identifies LGBT. And her faith influences all aspects of her life, including which messages she expresses and promotes as a graphic designer. She always decides which projects to design.
Okay. We're not watching this. We're not watching this fucking White Woman Avengers intro video. 2 or 3 figures at SCOTUS. Yeah, do we have wait, what the fuck was that? Wait, what the hell was it? Is this how old? Oh, it's 2 hours. God damn it. Fine, hit me with it, CNN. There's only a 3-minute video.
In our politics lead, the U.S. Supreme Court heard arguments earlier today over a case that pits two competing American principles against
This is
one
also
another.
From the ADF. God damn
Free
it.
speech
Okay, we'll see if
and freedom of religion, and the right to not be discriminated against. On one side, whether a graphic designer who holds...
Keep in mind, the freedom to discriminate is, from what I don't really think the freedom to discriminate is a valuable aspect to free speech. I just don't.
Religious views opposing same-sex marriage should be forced by the government to take customers who want her to make websites promoting same-sex weddings.
Cool.
And the other side, whether LGBTQ couples have a right to receive services from private businesses free of discrimination, just like a straight couple.
Makes
CNN's
sense.
Jessica Schneider has more on this fight.
Is there not going to be some editorializing?
The Supreme Court
It doesn't
now
look like
poised
it.
to
Did they
decide
just
whether certain
repost?
businesses can refuse
They
to
just
work with
reposted
same-sex
it. Cool.
couples
Works
on
for
the
me.
basis of free speech.
Granting such a license to discriminate would empower all businesses that offer what they believe to be expressive services, from architects to photographers to consultants, to refuse service to customers because of their disability, sexual orientation, religion, or race.
Okay, now let's keep in mind about this. I remember somebody brought this up one time in my chat where they were like, should a graphic designer should a graphic designer be forced to make to like, you know, work their graphic design magic for a Nazi group, right? And their argument was like, oh, well, look. Do you think, should we force, you know, maybe like a gay graphic designer to make, you know, a Nazi graphic design? Should the government do that? To which, I don't remember if this was my answer or not. I think I had to think about it for a bit because, you know, you got to kind of consider some of these things. It was an argument to which, like, sitting a couple months later thinking about it, and I go, wait a minute. Being a Nazi is kind of like a, you know, an opinion. It's kind of a, you don't identify. You're not born a Nazi. You're not born any of these things. Same with, quite frankly, you're not born a Christian, by the way. You usually get groomed into it by your parents who are Christians. But keep in mind, like, what we are talking about, the allowance for this kind of discrimination is not going to be, like, if it's going to center around people's religious liberty to discriminate against those who are gay, that is an identity. That is who that person is. That's not the same thing as being a Nazi and having fascist ideas. That's not the same thing. Being a fascist and being a Nazi is not the same thing as being gay or queer or anything else. At this point, I don't even see an argument for 303 Creative. You run a business that's open to the public, meaning you are not allowed to discriminate based on sexual orientation, religion, race. Like, it's rather clear, our discrimination laws, but they want this like, oh, but like, I don't believe marriage is between a man and woman. Guess what? Too bad. The law already says that's how it is. And we've already established the right to marry between gay couples. We've already established that as a right. That's number one. Number two, you're allowed to hold that opinion, but you are not allowed to discriminate against people for that opinion, because that would open the door to further discrimination based on the people's basic identity. If somebody said like, oh, they won't make a website because I wanted like a Nazi themed wedding with me and my skinhead wife. Cool. You don't have a right to whatever ideas you have. I don't have to put on a MAGA wedding for you. I don't have to put on a fucking, I don't know, Nancy Pelosi themed wedding for you if you're a liberal. Those aren't things that I'm, what's the word I'm looking for? That I'm compelled to do. Those are criteria which I'm allowed to be like, no, I'm sorry, I'm not going to be doing that. That's not, that is criteria that I'm allowed to pick from. But you're not allowed to pick between sexual orientation, because that is a basic, fundamental, like, identity for people, or at the very least a trait to a person that's so core to a lot of people. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Colorado web designer Lori Smith, who openly declares she's selective about websites she'll design, brought the case.
What's funny is this dumb fucking bitch could have simply made up a different excuse. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the date that you needed to be done. And, unfortunately, I just have a lot of, contracts open right now. I just can't service you guys because of scheduling conflicts, and I wouldn't have the time. I can recommend you somebody who I really trusted. That's all she had to do. That is all she had to do. But no, she needed to put the bigotry in front of the horse.
She's asking the Supreme Court to rule that she does not have to comply with a state law that prohibits businesses from discriminating against same-sex couples.
The state of Colorado is forcing me to create custom, unique artwork, expression, communicating and celebrating a different view of marriage, a view of marriage.
Now imagine briefly if she was describing, instead of gay marriage, interracial marriage. Just take the gay part out of it and imagine that's interracial marriage. Your Honor, as a good Christian, I do not believe that that I should be forced as a Christian under my free speech laws to promote interracial marriage. That is not something that I should have to do. I don't believe in it. We'd all sit here and go, this is ridiculous. But because it's gay people, there's some kind of argument that we need to have.
That goes against my deeply held beliefs.
But the liberal-leaning justices expressed concern that if creators can choose their customers, discrimination could run rampant. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson asking whether a mall photographer could say only white kids can sit on Santa's lap, and Justice Sonia Sotomayor asking about interracial or physically disabled couples being turned away.
Look at that.
So it doesn't really, there is no line on race, there is no line on disability.
Keep in mind, she's right. There is no, like, you know, what makes somebody black is really if you put them up against like the darkest person you can find and the whitest person you can find.
Ethnicity, none of the protected categories.
That's
in a public accommodation law.
The First Amendment is broad enough to cover the lesbian website designer and the Catholic calligrapher. The line is that no one on any side of any debate has to be compelled to express a message that violates their core convictions.
Also, this isn't about core convictions. I don't care. If you have core convictions, then guess what? Don't own a business. Then don't open your business up to the public. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Quite frankly, we cannot accommodate. We cannot. I talk a lot of times about, like, when I talk about trans people, I say, like, a key factor in the existence of trans people in our society is always about, can we accommodate this segment of society? Can we as a country accommodate trans people existing? I think we can. There's no reason why we couldn't. And at the end of the day, this is a case where we cannot accommodate this idea that people with deeply held religious beliefs get to discriminate. I'm sorry, you do not get a pass for that. Just because you have a reading of your text that says gay marriage is, a sin or whatever, does not mean you get a different set of rules from everybody else. It just doesn't. That's not how this works. You get to practice, you get to do all of these things. But if you're going to participate in the economy, one that is sanctioned by the U.S. government, by the state governments that you operate in, then you need to play by their rules. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. To think that, this would open the door, by the way, for, if there's a coffee shop, if there's a, web design, whatever, to go straights not need ask. I will not do, commissions for straight couples as cakes because it goes against my religious beliefs and, marriage is only between, same-sex couples. That is, and we would all look at that and go, come on, that's being ridiculous. But that's how these people are. They're fucking ridiculous. They want their own special rules. And at the end of the day, they always think like, but my religion says I get to discriminate against you. Well, that's nice. Go live in Saudi fucking Arabia then. You can go and fuck off to some theocratic nation where you can't fucking drive or ever show your ankles or any other piece of clothing and get the fuck out. And these people hardly believe in their religions anyway. How many different cloths do you think are in this one sweater? How many times do you think she's eaten shellfish? How many times has she skirted all the rest of the things that the Bible says that you're not supposed to partake in? All the fucking time. But no. This is the one that she picks, that she decides needs to be upheld more than any of the others. It's either all of it or none of it, in my opinion. You either take, I better not see you eating shellfish. I better not see you wearing clothes with different materials. I better not see you doing any of that shit. But the only one they're interested in is the discrimination one.
Smith says she's in the business of expressive speech, and while she's not opposed to working with same-sex couples in other areas, she argues she should be able to choose the messages she promotes, an argument some conservative justices seem to side with.
So the question isn't who, it's what.
Always.
Why are you right about how you...
And what's the difference between gay people and their rights? Because they're trying to argue, well, it's not because they're gay, it's because they're gay and they have a right that I don't think that they should have. That's the actual argument. Fucking
characterize website designers. Why are they different from, say, restaurants?
Because they're creating speech. In those other examples, speech is not at issue.
The Supreme Court sidestepped this same issue 4 years ago, ruling in favor of a Colorado baker who refused to make wedding cakes for same-sex couples, but on very narrow grounds that only applied to that case.
Fair enough. Okay.
Now the stakes are much higher, with concern building among LGBTQ advocates that a ruling for the website designer could be a harbinger for other adverse rulings.
And keep in mind, if they rule in favor of this web designer, you are going to see a swath of companies decide that their private products, that their saleable products are now expressive speech. Because let's see, because they said specifically expressive. Is that what it was? Let me go back really quick. What we're at? We're at 312. Hit me with that again.
Because they're creating speech. In those other examples, speech is not at issue.
The Supreme Court.
Am I crazy? Did I not hear expressive speech? Maybe it was. Oh wait, where's the transcript? Let's see. Control F. Expressive. There it is.
Says she's in the business of expressive speech.
Interesting. Okay, cool. So I was right. I was correct. Let's take a look. Expressive speech. Expressive speech. Expressive speech is our ability to communicate our thoughts and feelings through words, gestures, signs, and or symbols. Yeah. Let's see. An example is speaking, gesturing, waving, writing facial expressions, and vocalizations. I wonder, could you describe cooking as expressive speech? You are communicating things, like especially if you're like a fine dining format. Yeah, which like ability to communicate thoughts and feelings. Yeah, so this is like literally anything. Like you could have a company that prints t-shirts, that if you wanted a t-shirt printed for your anniversary with your with your husband, with your gay husband, and this company could go, we do anniversaries, but we don't for your anniversary. And it's not because you're gay, it's because you have a right that we believe you shouldn't have. That's why. No, this is ridiculous. This is absurd. And they're probably gonna pass. They're probably gonna side with 303
for
Creative,
other adverse rulings.
If there were to be a loophole of the kind discussed, people with disabilities, African Americans, Jews, Muslims, others could find themselves without access to the marketplace.
Now, there's currently no case before the Supreme Court that would eliminate the right to same-sex marriage, but still there is this concern that conservative justices could eventually overturn that precedent. After all, Jake, it was just a few months ago that they overturned Roe v. Wade, and in that...
Yeah, they're certainly driving towards it. This is ultimately what they want to do. All right, independent state legislative theory. I think this actually got bumped, but at issue, the so-called independent state legislative theory put forth in this case by North Carolina Republican state legislature. If adopted, it would give state legislators the power to put in place all manner of election laws and rules without any review by the state courts. At its most extreme, the theory could eliminate not just state judicial power over elections, but governors' vetoes, and it might allow the state legislators to certify presidential electors who were not approved by the voters. An idea that Donald Trump tried unsuccessfully to put forth in 2020. Might allow state legislators to certify presidential electors who were not approved by the voters. Yeah. In the particular case before the Justice North Carolina Supreme Court ruled that a Republican-dominated state legislator in drawing new congressional districts after the 2020 census violated the state constitution with an extreme partisan gerrymandering. Yeah, I think this is, from what I've heard, this got kind of pulled back. So we're not going to hear, I think this is kind of, if I remember correctly, I heard on the majority report that we're not going to hear the full breadth of that. Sunday work at USPS. Case tests how far employers must go to accommodate the religious views of women. Christ above. 46 years ago, the court by a law. You know what I'm really tired of? Honest to God, I'm really tired of religious folks believing that they have some kind of the same kind of like civil rights that we reserve for ethnic and racial groups. That really fucking annoys me, because at the end of the day, to me, whatever religion you are, that's like a choice you've made. And like whatever choice that is, I don't think that we are as a society compelled to accommodate you in whatever that is. If your religion requires you to leave at 3 p.m. in the afternoon because, I don't know, you got to go to church or something every day at 4 p.m. in the afternoon or some nonsense, then, when somebody says, sorry, I can't hire you because of that, that's kind of a you thing, in my opinion. I don't think we need to accommodate, religious views of employees. I just don't. It's not something I think that, you can hold whatever opinion you'd like, and you can hold whatever religious opinion you'd like, but I don't really see how we benefit or why we need to keep that in mind while we, run this society, I suppose. Anyway, 46 years ago, the court, by a lopsided margin, ruled that an employer need not accommodate a worker's desire to avoid work on the Sabbath if that would mean operating shorthanded or regularly paying premium wages to replace placement workers. The court went on to say that employers should not have to bear more than what is called, quote, ad minimis, or trifling cost. The de minimis language has sparked lots of criticism over the years, but Congress has repeatedly rejected proposals to provide greater accommodation for religious observers, including those who object to working on the Sabbath. Now, however, religious groups of every kind are pressing a new and more conservative group of justices to overturn or modify the court's earlier ruling. The case was heard in April. Yep, they're probably gonna run it. Yep. I have no doubt that they're gonna do that, which would be lovely. Student loans. A handful of Republican-dominated states, Missouri, Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Kansas, and South Carolina, have asked the Supreme Court to permanently block the Biden administration's student loan forgiveness program. The states contend that the president exceeded his legal authority when he implemented a program to cancel up to $20,000 in debt for people holding federal student loans. Okay, so I want to know why a bunch of states have any say over funds distributed by the federal government. It's a federal department and a federal issue. The merits of the case are fairly straightforward. Does the 2003 law, known as the HEROES Act, give the president and his Secretary of Education the power to authorize federal student loan forgiveness? The case was argued in February. I can't, yeah, okay. I can't say, I feel like they'll throw this out. And then Biden will get none of the student loan forgiveness that he already took a half measure on. Actually, to be honest, what he should do is just pass it, do it, and then, when they say you can't do that, be like, oh, well, the money's already gone. Too bad. All right, Counterman versus Colorado. Ooh, another one in Colorado. The Supreme Court this term revisits the question the court has never answered. When is a threat a quote, true threat? What does the prosecution have to prove? Does it have to show that a defendant intended to frighten his target, or is it enough to show that his words would have that effect on a reasonable person? The case involves Coles Whalen, a singer-songwriter from Colorado, and Billy Counterman, a man convicted and sentenced to 4.5 years in prison for stalking Whalen and making true threats against her. The case was heard in April. Interesting. Really? Do we need to? Okay. Interesting. So, yeah. For all of this, I really only have one thing to say, and it's been the thing I've said every time we talk about the Supreme Court, which is pack the fucking court, do it on ideological lines, and tell Republicans, if they fuck around and, they try to hold seats hostage again or whatever, that you're going to do it again. And every time you're going to add more and more justices. Quite frankly, this is an institution that is not accountable to anybody, and that needs to change. For a lifetime position, for you not to be eligible for any kind of, you can't get voted out, there's no outside pressure to actually, considering these are, by the way, political bodies. We're not going to sit here and pretend that they're not political bodies. But, the fact that regular people have absolutely no way to pressure the Supreme Court in any kind of way as a political body is absurd. The Supreme Court is frequently, we already know about Clarence Thomas and his, buddy who pays him a ton of money to rule in a pro-business fashion. We already know about the Federalist Society. There are structures to ensure an ideological win in the Supreme Court as it is. And because of that, by itself, that means we have to have an understanding and approach the Supreme Court in a way as political as it has become. This isn't a, the Supreme Court used to be, it doesn't matter whether it used to be apolitical, whether it wasn't. The point is now that it is far from that. And we are far past the point in which we can accommodate a Supreme Court that is not, that is not accountable to the people, and one that is frequently influenced by, big money and ideologically funded, campaigns and groups such as the Federalist Society. So, it's just, we can't have it anymore. But either way, let's, okay, a lot of talking all at once. Let's shift into the legally distinct fun half, and then I'm going to sip some water as quick as I can, and then we'll do the Rand Paul video real quick, and then we'll do the RFK stuff. Sound good? Sound good? Sound good? We're going to have to be like quick on the Rand Paul video too, but anyway.
So do not shop at Target, or else you're gay.
Spit in my mouth, look in my eyes.
Just to simplify this, I think we're just going to use your...
I may keep the pantyhose on. It does feel kind of good, actually.
Larger than that, Charlie.
I live like a capitalist every single day.
Beat it up, N-word.
What is more important? You are going to defend Joker.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The alpha males are back.
All right, we're back. All right, I said we're gonna be quick, so we're gonna just like roll right into it. Rand Paul, in the title of the stream, I put in quotation priorities, because what I want to talk about and use this video as a vehicle is to talk about priorities and how we prioritize the use of our tax dollars. So let's listen to Rand Paul, spew on about the nonsense that ridiculous stuff that the taxpayer has their money spent on.
Republicans point at Democrats and say, we don't like your programs, let's cut your programs. Democrats look at Republicans and say, no, don't cut our programs, cut yours. Everybody's, don't cut mine, cut yours.
Okay, well, off the bat, let's dispel with some with the fiction here. Democrats do not argue for cuts to Republican programs. Democrats argue for further spending on the programs for their priorities. Republicans only want to cut spending. That's it. That is the relationship. Democrats have no interest in cutting programs. That is strictly a exclusively Republican party priority.
That's why I've taken the approach and continue to take the approach, we should cut everything across the board. In the past, there were always like conservatives who say, let's get rid of public television,
radical
let's get rid of
centrism.
Sesame Street and Big Bird, and they'd get so much grief over it. It's like, why do that? You're not balancing the budget over Big Bird. Take 1% of Big Bird's budget. Take 1% of everybody's budget. And what would that bring about? It would bring about more conservation of the dollar. It would bring about more restraint and more reform.
So let's talk about this. Every single day, you pay taxes. Every single day. You pay sales tax. You pay payroll taxes. You pay the Social Security tax. You pay, there was a time where you paid, if you didn't have health care under Obamacare, you paid, I believe, a tax on that as well. Every single day, you are paying taxes on something. And every single day, that's the U.S. government taking in dollars, and how we decide to use those are our priorities. Now, what do we spend a large portion of all of those dollars on? Well, one of the biggest programs is going to be Social Security and Medicare. Those are two of the most popular programs that we have in the United States. One is to ensure that our older Americans have a dignified retirement, and a retirement that they have a right to after working for around 30 to 40 years. The other is to make sure that they are healthy and have access to health care during that time. Those are the two elements that we spend the most amount of money on. The next under that is the U.S. military. Now, far be it from me to not ask for cuts to the military budget, but it would be far off from Republicans, a party in which Rand Paul is a part of, and seems to always find himself aligned with people who are interested in either increasing or continuing the funding, the incredibly large funding into the U.S. military. If Rand Paul was truly interested in bringing down the debt and the deficit, do you want to know the program? Do you want to know the area in which we can make cuts and the average American would not feel any of the brunt of that? It would be the U.S. military and the Pentagon budget. Quite frankly, we spend a absurd amount of money. The last statistic I saw, I think, was, let's go take a look, actually. U.S. Military spending? U.S. military spending versus the world. Let's take a look. Combined defense spending by the United States accounted for nearly 40% of military expenditures by countries around the world in 2022. Meaning, we spend, of everybody in the world, everybody, of all the money spent on every single military in the world, we make up 40% alone. We are one country, and we spend 40% alone of all military spending in the world, just on our military. What could we be doing with that money? Well, for one, we could expand Medicare to apply to more Americans. We could also offer, I'm sure we could also offer college and an opportunity to get an education to all Americans as well. These are two programs that would be popular, that would be reinvestments into you and me. But Republicans don't want to do that. They want to fund the military. Does that money get reinvested into you or me? I pay into it, you pay into it. What do we get out of it? Nothing. Raytheon gets rich, Boeing gets rich, all these weapon manufacturers get rich, and we still have to find a way to pay for our medical bills. We still have to find a way to pay for our kids' college that we can't afford. We're paying it in and getting nothing out. Absolutely nothing. But Rand Paul isn't interested in cutting that. Sure, he wants to cut 1% of everyone's budget, but understand that 1% of everyone's budget doesn't do anything to the possible budget that the U.S. military is looking at, but it does hinder the budget of smaller programs. 1% out of $100 is a much larger hit than 1% of, how much money the Pentagon gets? They're not going to miss that 1%. The smaller the program, the more those percentages hit, meaning 1% would devastate some programs. But in this country, we need to be better. I want to emphasize this. In this country, we need to be better about how and what we prioritize and what the reasoning for any of that is. And this is what this is, what this little act is radical centrism, which even then, Rand Paul, not much of a centrist from my perspective, but this is just, why can't we all just spend less and the American people get less? And that's it. That's this whole thing, is we should just do less. The federal government, the role of government in everyone's lives should just be smaller.
I'll end with this. People say, where would you cut? I would say everywhere. But I can give you, on the tip of my hand, ridiculous stuff that should have 100% cut, but is never cut and goes on and on. In the early 1970s, William Proxmire, a conservative Democrat, pointed out that the National Science Foundation was spending $50,000 to study what makes people fall in love. Now, that's a better, I think, topic for Cosmopolitan magazine than it is for a government study. Nowadays, it's gone up. We spent $1 million having young people take selfies of themselves while smiling and then looking at it later in the day to see if looking at pictures of yourself smiling makes you a happier person. That cost you $1 million. We spent $1.5 million studying the mating call of the Panamanian frog to see if the mating call of the country frogs was different than the city frogs.
Now, he's kind of naming off a bunch of stuff that I'm sure on the surface level, some of this might be in there, but let's think about this for a moment. Do you think it's valuable for us to study the sociological impacts of social media on people? Do you think that's worth studying? Do you think if you're an older person, even if you're a younger person who doesn't use it very often, do you think it's valuable for the United States government to, at the very least, in a small way, study the phenomenon of people constantly taking pictures on their phone and the kind of vanity around that? Do you think that's worth kind of studying from a sociological perspective? I think it is. I look at kids these days. I sound old saying that, but I look at kids these days and I go, we had cameras when I was younger. At no point was I ever interested in, taking pictures constantly with the disposable, sending it off to CVS, and then picking it up like a couple days later. Like that just wasn't a thing when I was growing up. So would it be interesting, from a governmental standpoint, would it be interesting? Would it be valuable to understand why young people are engaging with that kind of activity a lot more now? And what effects that might have on their happiness, but more importantly, their mental health. These are important things, I think. I do think there is value to these. The same way with the frog example. At the end of the day, this is scientific studies. Biological, certainly. Ecological, certainly. But interesting nonetheless. Something that we should be interested in. We should be understanding and studying the environment that we live in and the effects that we're having on the environment that we live in. Because if a frog is making a different sound, even though it's the same kind of frog, depending on where its location is, that tells us something about the ecological change that this specific line of frogs are undergoing and some of the, I think evolutionary nuances that we could be seeing. But that's valuable information, I think. I think that's valuable information. And he'll say, oh, that cost you $1 million. Do you think it cost you $1 million for those two facts? No. We're talking about complete departments that study probably multiple different things. And I'm fine with not knowing and saying probably, because the idea that we would need to spend that we would need to spend $1 million on just the sociological interests of people's selfies and happiness therein, I'd say that's a pretty big stretch. I'm not super secure that Rand Paul is being honest here. But, or at the very least being honest about the breadth of an entire program studies.
Spent nearly $1 million studying the Japanese quail to see if they're more sexually promiscuous when they're on cocaine. I think we could have just polled the audience on that one. This is the kind of ridiculous stuff.
Do you think the audience knew that?
But does it get better? I complain about this every year and all the time, and everybody shakes their head and says, no way, why are we doing that? The National Science Foundation, we increased their budget 50% last year.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so he's just talking about the national. Okay, so that's all he's talking about is one department, the national science, which again, you can complain like, oh, I never asked this question. But, buddy, it's science. It's there to ask questions and find answers. You don't have to always like the answers. You don't have to always think the questions are interesting. But at the end of the day, these are things that are interesting to people. These are like the National Science Institute is a place where you can do science on things that aren't or that wouldn't be deemed what's the word I'm looking for? Valuable on a capitalistic level. Do you think any corporation wants to learn about quail? Do you think they're interested in that? No. Are private corpos interested in the effects of cocaine on quail? Probably not. But is there some kind of, is that something that we should have an awareness of? Is that something that, maybe needs to be looked into, studied? I don't know what brought up this study. Let's take a look. Quail, what did he say? I'm pretty sure he said quail. I could be wrong, but let's find out. Cool. I don't even know. Quail? Yeah? No, not quaaludes. Cocaine. Oh, I'm sorry. Cocaine and the sexual habits of quail, or, yep, National Institute of Science. Cocaine induces state-dependent. Let's take a look. Cocaine induces state-dependent learning of sexual conditions in male Japanese quail. Yeah, like, and at the end of the day, you might say to yourself, why do I need to know this? And the answer is you don't. But is this going to be valuable to somebody at some point? Could this be valuable to somebody if we're in a crisis where quail are beginning to become extinct, which does have an ecological consequence to it? Is this a possible solution? I don't fucking know, but eventually we would have to find that out. So, like, again, you don't have to always think, especially with science and especially with this sort of stuff. You don't always have to know, like, is this applicable to me? Do I need to know this information? Well, probably not, and probably not right now. But is there an opportunity at one point that, hey, we might actually need this information? We might have an opportunity to robustly increase the stock of quail here in the United States if we're having some kind of shortage, which again has ecological consequences. Then this is one way to solve that. But again, it's just like, well, I don't like it. I don't think it's interesting. That's nice, man. You don't, if you don't, do I find it interesting? Not really. But it's not about if I think it's valuable. It's about, is there some argument of, like, can this be used? Is this useful in some way? You have to kind of think a little bit deeper than the surface level.
Money. We've almost increased our budget by 50%. The people are studying why you go on day.
Also keep in mind, I mentioned it earlier. Notice he's talking about the National Institute of Science, and he is not going to say the military budget. That's how you know he's full of shit when he says he wants cuts. He's full of shit. It's just, if you actually were worried about the debt and the deficit, you'd cut the military budget, you'd increase taxes on the 1%. It's simple as that. But they won't do it, and Rand Paul doesn't even argue for it.
Why you're happy, why the male frogs, what their mating call is. This is the craziness, but it never gets better because we always spend more money. So my amendment would do this. My amendment would reduce the spending in real terms. We'd actually spend less money next year than last year. It'd be a 5% reduction in money, and you'd spend less each year, and over 5 years, you'd balance your budget, and then we'd be on course to balance. People say, why not? Who can do this? Half of Europe does it. Sweden balances their budget. Germany balances their budget.
Notice he's also mentioning countries with much smaller economies. And also, keep in mind, a lot of those countries are also reinvesting a lot of the money that they do spend into their society. They're, reinvesting that into, medical care for their citizens, into college for their citizens, amongst other things. So this isn't apples and oranges. He wants to paint this like, oh, well, this is how Europe does it. No, friend. Europe does it by having high taxes and redistributing a lot of their money to everyday citizens. That's how Europe does that. They don't balance their budgets by having almost no social safety net, having none of these programs. They do it because they fund those very well by taxing the rich. That's how that actually works in Europe. Not whatever, Rand Paul does. And again, if he really took this seriously, if he wanted to see a reduction, go to the military budget. Quick, it's easy. There's no argument against it. But he doesn't. Instead, he wants to cut everybody because he knows nobody will go for it, and he knows it'll never pass. And Rand Paul is just a guy who, just wants to show his ass all the time and pretend like he's the principled conservative, the responsible guy in the room. Your entire party continuously cuts taxes and increases spending. And you sit there every single time and don't say a goddamn word about it. So fucking spare me, Rand Paul. Anyway. Okay, RFK Jr. We can put this back to normal. God, we're making awful time, aren't we? Let's see. What else do I have again? Where is it? we just need to be very picky with the topics here. Anyway, let's go. Okay. So RFK, I'm intro. Why should you be president? Okay. How long is this gonna last? Okay, let's go with this one. Uh-huh. Oh God, he's not one of these, is he? Man, nothing bad ever happened to a Kennedy. Oh yeah. Has there been censorship? Oh fuck, I thought I didn't have that muted.
Well, I'm running because
He asked why he's running for president.
Okay,
we're definitely
going in.
This dude talks really slow.
Our country, but my political party, and it really culminated during the my unease with what's happening culminated during the pandemic when I saw all this kind of almost like an orchestrated assault on the Bill of Rights. That suddenly it was okay to censor speech, particularly criticism of the government, which has always been the purview of American citizenship.
Okay, so is he talking about okay, so he's obviously talking about COVID, but what censorship? Like, what were people arrested for? I don't remember people getting arrested for saying the vaccine is full of demons or something. I don't remember that being a thing.
And then they went after freedom of worship. They closed every church in our country for a year with no scientific citation.
Good.
Democratic process. No.
Wait, whoa. We all had an understanding now and we had an understanding then and have a greater understanding now that the choice to limit public gatherings was a public health, was under the purview of public health. You can go to churches. I got no problem with you going to churches and praising God. My issue is when you leave that event, while you go in there and spread and roll around in your all's germ-infested bodies, and then come out into the rest of the public spaces and spread a lot of that. We saw churches become super spreader events. So no, I'm sorry that this falls at the end of the day under the guise of public health. I don't care if you have a religious, if you have some interest or some religious drive to go to church. Your going to church does not just affect you. This is where people seem to have a real misunderstanding of their impact on other people. I understand you want to go to church, but you're not the person who's going to pay for going to church. There are going to be people you interact with at the local McDonald's, at the local Walmart, at the local grocery store, at the local everything, who will pay the price for you going to church, unmasked, hugging and touching and everything else during a pandemic. And you might cause somebody at the grocery store to maybe get COVID, maybe give it to their, unknowingly give it to their grandparents or something. And then they get sick and they die. At the end of the day, it doesn't just stop. You do not have this fucking Christian dome around you after you get out of church that will avoid you from spreading germs to other people. That's not how that works. And we were in a particularly vulnerable moment as a country. So no, no, the fuck out of here. You do not have a right to engage in dangerous congregation that will have negative implications for the rest of society unwillingly. No, I'm sorry.
They went after jury trials so that we can no longer, which are guaranteed by the 7th Amendment, in any case or controversy exceeding $25, Americans are entitled to jury trials if somebody harms you. But suddenly, you couldn't sue vaccine companies or pharmaceutical companies or any kind of medical provider, no matter how negligent they were, no matter how reckless their conduct, no matter how grievous your injury.
Pro-business, shocker.
They went after property rights. They closed. There's a 5th Amendment right to due process and just compensation. They closed 3.3 million businesses with no due process, no just compensation.
Well, they didn't. Whoa. What do we mean? First of all, did those companies shutter because of the pandemic, or were they forcibly closed? See, there's a big difference between everything had to be shut down and your business didn't survive, which is a bad thing, by the way, and the government saying your business dead now. Like that, it's very different.
It went after the Fourth Amendment, the Fourth Amendment right to, or prohibition on warrantless searches and seizures was just left by the wayside as we encountered all of these kind of intrusive government mandates where you couldn't essentially leave your home without showing your private medical records, etc.
It was a vaccine card.
I was subject to a lot of the censorship, but more disturbing.
Wait. Oh, it was a card. It was a vaccine card issued by the government. Actually, if I remember correctly, technically it's issued by medical practitioners, if I remember correctly, and it was a verification that you've been vaccinated, because there were systems put in place to keep people who are unvaccinated, who chose to not get vaccinated. Keep in mind, like, if you choose to not get vaccinated, you have the right to do that. But unfortunately, you don't have the right to enter into spaces. We already do this with kids also. You have to get your kids vaccinated before they're allowed to hang around with other kids. If I'm a parent, I don't want your fucking germ-ridden, unvaccinated little shit around my kid. And same goes for working people. Like, I'm sorry, you do have the right to decide if you want to get vaccinated. You don't have the right, on the other hand, to get close to me and be around me and put me at risk for your lack of interest in your own health care. That's just not a thing.
Mothers who had injured children, people who said they suffered or felt that they had suffered injuries from the vaccines, doctors who wanted to provide medical advice on early treatments were all banished from the internet. And
do you have a right to the internet? Let's be clear. You don't have a right to the internet. Let's all be very, very clear about that. You don't have a right to the internet, to Twitter, to any of it. You didn't build it. It's not your platform. You have a right to walk your ass outside and talk to a bunch of people. Nobody can stop you from doing that. But in terms of being on the internet, in terms of being on another person's platform, no, you do not have the right to that. I don't know how many times we have to go over this.
My own political party was...
Holy shit, this is fucking lunacy.
At the
I didn't think this would be that bad.
Those moves, and our party suddenly became the party of censorship, the party of pharmaceutical companies, the party of fear, and now the party of war.
So let me ask you a little bit about that, because we both watched a lot of interviews of you, and both on a general interest, but also to prepare for.
Jesus, this is worse than I thought. This is like seriously worse than I thought. I thought this would be bad, but this is like fucking atrocious. Okay. How do you differ from Trump? How do you differ from Biden?
Let me ask you a little bit about that, because we both watched a lot of interviews of you, and both on a general interest, but also to prepare for this interview and sitting down with you. And I think some of the key issues that you tend to focus on are COVID, the Ukraine war, and censorship. Those are all issues where you seem to be in basic agreement with the former president, Donald Trump. So I'd love for you to lay out, what do you see as some of the most critical differences you have with the former president?
Well, I have a lot of not only issue differences, but stylistic differences. I think my approach to people and politics is very different. I'd say, in terms of issues, probably the biggest departure is on the environment. And in fact, my first encounter with Donald Trump is that I sued him twice, in the years before he was president, to block his construction of two golf courses, which I successfully did in the New York City watershed. But on all of the, environmental issues, I think my worldview is very different than the president's. I'm happy to.
Okay. Uninteresting. Ukraine casualties in war. Let's hear it.
One quibble with you. I've seen you mention this 300,000 Ukrainian deaths number a couple of times, and I wasn't able to find. Can you tell us, where does that number come from?
That was, I forget the name of it. It's the commander of the Ukrainian forces, and it was in his conversation with the NATO commander, which was publicized.
Because we saw in the leaked documents, it was.
I believe that's correct. Okay, but I will I will provide you with that citation.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love to see, because we looked beforehand and weren't able to see that. There were different numbers in the leaked documents. So we just want to be accurate.
Well, let me, I'll get you that today.
That'd be great.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So day one agenda.
Okay.
What are the priorities?
The priorities on day one.
Okay, cool. We talked about priorities. No, fuck me.
Nothing happened.
Here we go.
The priorities on day one will be pardoning Julian Assange, and then starting to fix.
This feels okay. Okay, so this feels very like terminally online. Like the idea that in your day one agenda is pardoning one guy. Now, look, I happen to think that Assange should be pardoned, but day one, like day fucking one, there's nothing more important going on that like maybe save that one for a little bit later. Like that's a back burner thing. The fact that that's number one is really fucking weird to me. Like, this is such terminally online shit.
FDA,
it feels like.
CDC, get them off of the their subsistence relationship with the pharmaceutical industry, and unraveling
What does he
that
mean,
agency
subsistence?
capture, putting the right people in that agency who know how to do that.
And is that just a matter of different personnel, or do you need to have a public option for pharmaceutical companies? Do you need to nationalize the pharmaceutical industry? What does that actually look like?
I don't think that's the right thing. I think we need to get pharmaceutical money out of the regulatory agencies.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
NIH.
Okay. So we're not doing a public option, and he thinks that's okay. If you're not in support of a public option, you're damn sure not in support of Medicare for all, which tells me immediately I don't give a fuck about your that really tells me a lot about your I think perspective on healthcare, because at the very least a public option is the gateway to eventually getting to Medicare for all. And if you're not even willing to take that step, then I don't even know why bother with what to bother with you on this topic is. Quite frankly, we are a nation that can absolutely afford to offer and accommodate everybody healthcare in this country. We can do it. It is just a matter of priorities and a matter of funding. That's all it is.
Personnel should not be able to collect royalties on pharmaceutical products that they worked on, which they can do today. NIH has devolved from being a research agency that's supposed to be improving American health, and instead it's become an incubator for pharmaceutical products. So they develop, initial pharmaceutical products in their lab,
right?
And then they farm that product out to the university, and they give the university.
And this is the system of where our tax dollars invent a lot of the drugs, do a lot of the R&D, hand it over to the colleges to continue to do that, and then eventually hand over the formulas and everything else for the drug companies, who then have the private capital to manufacture and distribute those. Essentially, we could do this ourselves, but we choose to have the free market do it because there's some understanding or some belief that they will be the ones who deliver it in a cost-efficient way. They don't. They charge us the most. Look at our prices for drugs compared to Europe's. They charge us the most because they can. Because at the end of the day, their cost for manufacturing is going to be the same no matter what. But if they can get more money out of us, if we're a better ROI, it's why they keep this system and they fight so hard. Anybody who's offering a Medicare for all system, because that would actually cut into their profits. Collective bargaining from all Americans. You either give America the best prices or you don't do business in the United States. And also we're going to revoke all of your licenses, and you're actually going to have to do the research, the R&D and testing and everything else on your end. You're going to have to recoup those costs. None of those pharmaceutical companies want that. They want to get the recipe essentially from the NIH and the colleges, and then they want to spend some money, manufacture it, spend some money, distribute it, and pocket everything else.
Universities, hundreds of millions of dollars, and to go through phase 1 and phase 2 trials, and then they bring in a pharmaceutical company if the drug works, which they almost always do because they can make them look like they work. And then they bring in a pharmaceutical company to do the phase 3, which is very, very expensive, may cost $1 billion. And along the way, everybody gets a piece of the patent. So NIH gets a piece of the patent. For example, NIH owns half the Moderna patent. And, there's been billions and billions of dollars, maybe 100 billion.
That we have not
so
seen.
Far on that platform, on that mRNA platform that NIH developed. And NIH stands to collect half of that money. Not only that, but individuals within NIH, the deputies of Anthony Fauci, have margin rights on that patent. So they can collect $150,000 a year for life and then their children and so on.
Man, I wish that was me.
That product's being sold. And what that means is that the regulatory function of the agency is subsumed by these, the mercantile ambitions of these regulators.
And the problem is, and here's the problem, the solution to him isn't tearing down that structure. The relationship under whatever his proposal was earlier, which was separate those a little bit, there is no way you separate that unless you affect the actual structures of pharmaceutical manufacturing and distribution. That's the only way you do that. You have to do something to disrupt that structure. I haven't heard what his plan is to do that, but based on what he said earlier, you can change the personnel. You can say that you can tell the NIH that they're not going to make as much money going back into their federal program for making any of this stuff, but it's not going to matter at the end of the day. And keep in mind, the NIH isn't interested in profit seeking. Yes, they do collect profits because at the end of the day, the US government did create some of these and did a lot of the beginning research, which is some of the most exploratory research in these kinds of drugs. But all of that are losses to pick, any of the money we see back from that is just recouping costs and then researching the next drug that we're going to need to develop. So, this is a system that's paying for itself. It is working for us. The only time it stops working for us is when we hand it over to private corporations, when we hand it over to corpos to fucking manufacture and distribute. That's when we start to lose money. And the question is, all right, well, you need to change the relationship, but the only one you actually need to change is the pharmaceuticals and their relationship. You need to either have them buy in more or them get less of the rights. And I mean less.
Who are no longer regulators.
Isn't the profit motive, though, at the core of that problem? Because the problem you're describing isn't unique to FDA, NIH, et cetera. You can go down, I know you would talk about the EPA, you probably have direct experience there as an environmental lawyer, but you can go down the list of these agencies and you see the way the revolving door works. You see the way that there's a lot of industry capture, because ultimately, we have a health insurance industry and a hospital industry and a pharmaceutical industry that has the bottom line as the bottom line. Isn't that really the root of the problem here?
Well, do you mean human nature?
I mean the profit motive. I mean putting the profit motive above health.
The profit motive is human nature. So, and
that's a real. I don't like that answer because it's a. I don't like that answer mainly because it's a naturalization of greed. It's this assumption that humans' base, I think, instinct is greed, which is bullshit. I don't believe that whatsoever. I do think there are people who. Actually, no, I actually don't believe that whatsoever. Mainly because we have lived, especially nowadays, especially in the last, couple hundred years, we've lived under the format of capitalism. What is at the heart of capitalism? It's wealth. It's the growth of one's wealth. At the end of the day, capitalism as a structure and as a system promotes and selects for people with wealth. That's what it does. It is a system that promotes people with more money. If you have more money, you are at the top of society. There is no version of being at the top of society without money, meaning that people aren't the thing that determines success in our society. It's money that does. So no, and people have obviously been trained by this over the last couple hundreds of years. They see what happens when you're poor. They see how you're treated when you're rich. They see the outcomes when you're either of these things and the huge disparity between them. So it's obviously the system of capitalism, to which he doesn't seem particularly interested in overturning, or at the very least challenging, which tells me, quite frankly, not worth my time.
In a democracy, the challenge is how do you insulate public institutions from the human impulse for greed and acquisition?
Yeah, no, yeah. I don't believe that's true. I don't believe there is a human impulse to greed. I believe there is a capitalistic incentive to greed. At the end of the day, like, talk to like poor people in like Florida and Alabama, any of those things. They're going to tell you almost always the same thing. In the system, in the world that they live in, they have an understanding that the rich get richer, the poor get poor, and there's nothing I can do about it. And if you ask them, what do you think, what would it take for you to do something about it? And they're going to say, money. You need money to fight these structures. And if you don't have that, then you're never going to be able to. And it's what happens when you have a structure that's just centered around money. It incentivizes greed in people. I don't think that greed in and of itself is a natural human trait, that we're all, like, at the end of the day at our base level. I don't find that to be true at all.
And that's really, to me, that's the solution, is you get the money. Half of FDA's budget, almost half of FDA's budget comes from pharma. Mm-hmm. And so, they're not really working for the public interest. They're working for the pharmaceutical companies. CDC.
And also, wait. Huh? Half their budget doesn't come from pharma paying them. Half their budget comes from the relationship that they have with pharma, because they own a percentage of basically every drug, meaning that when big pharma does well, we're supposed to do well. But unfortunately, we've gotten into a place where the relationship and the balance has been shifted. That's the actual problem, because there has been that revolving door. Right? That's just...
buys about $5 billion worth of vaccines
profit margin.
a year.
That's
from
all it is.
Pharmaceutical industries.
You solve this with all of the profit margin.
That are sweetheart deals that benefit those companies. A product that CDC has previously approved and mandated effectively, and then CDC then is under under pressure then to make sure everybody takes those products and to not find problems with those products if problems arise. You want the regulator to be the first one to notice.
This is just conspiracy.
This is just conspiracy. We have a system that is being corroded by conflicts of interest.
Yes, and some of these issues.
You want to remove those conflicts of interest as much as you can. You'll never get rid of all of them, but you want to remove them as much. And it's
you just nationalize it. That's all you do. You just nationalize it. That's all you do. Or again, you have a Medicare for all system.
They're really like agency capture on steroids now, because the conflicts are so rife and pervasive.
And the U.S. healthcare system is uniquely good in certain respects in terms of advanced treatments, et cetera, but uniquely bad in a lot of other respects in terms of, chronic illnesses and the expense. I mean, we pay way more for healthcare than other developed nations, and we get way less. As you know, every other developed nation in the world has universal healthcare. Do you support universal healthcare through a Medicare for All program or something similar?
I would say my highest ambition would be to have a single payer program, which, with that people who want to have private programs can go ahead and do that, but to have a single payer program that is available to everybody. I don't know how politically realistic that is, but, if you ask me.
Well, let's be clear. It was completely unrealistic, 2 cycles ago. And then Bernie Sanders came along and fucking made it a mainstream conversation piece. Keep in mind, the American people have known about Medicare for all, or at the very least, a single payer system, almost their entire life. Like, we've always known that our healthcare is fucked compared to Europe. The only difference is that we are constantly told by the only party that has the space to argue for it that it's not time, that it's never going to be time. The Democratic Party, obviously, is what I'm referring to. But with Bernie Sanders' ascension in 2016, we saw a huge awakening to people, to the realization that no, all it takes is one candidate making one strong argument and pushing for it like hell. So I don't know what this, it's politically unrealistic. No, it's not. It's not. You have a base of support that would absolutely support that. The Democratic Party is primed and ready for a strong candidate running on the Medicare for all system. But there are, there's always going to be structural disadvantages and structural biases. But to say that like it's unrealistic, I think is ridiculous. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. We saw 2016. We saw Bernie in 2016. You can't tell me it's impossible. It's unrealistic now with how unpopular Biden is.
If I were designing the system from the beginning, that's what I would do. You're right. The system now is broken. We pay the most for healthcare in the world. I think we're 79th. We're behind like Costa Rica and Cuba in terms of health outcomes. We have the highest level of chronic disease in the world of any country. That means neurological diseases, autoimmune diseases, allergic diseases like peanut allergies, food allergies, eczema, anaphylaxis, asthma, and we pay more than anybody else. We also consume more pharmaceutical products. I think we take 3 to 4 times as many drugs per capita than Europeans do. And they're not making us healthier. The third largest cause of death in this country after cancer and heart attacks is now.
Well, we're already not healthy. Anybody taking those drugs are only compensating for the unhealth that we already have. Like any pharmaceuticals that you're taking is there to compensate for your unhealth. It's not like we're taking all these drugs, we aren't getting healthier. No. We're taking all of these drugs and they're keeping us at the level that we're on. If we didn't have any of those, if Americans took less pharmaceuticals, we would almost assuredly be less healthy. Certainly.
Pharmaceutical drugs. Americans are the sickest country in the world. This is the sickest generation we've ever had. And we spend $4.3 trillion on healthcare every year. 80% of that goes to treating chronic disease. And to me, the worst, the most alarming metric, when I was a boy, 6% of Americans had chronic disease. Today, by 2006, 54%. And, I'm sure it's gone up since then. That means half our children are debilitated for life from a chronic disease. And the pharmaceutical industry is making a lot of money on that, selling us the EpiPens, the albuterol inhalers.
Also, the problem isn't that they're selling it to us. That's not the problem. The problem is that we're being price gouged. At the end of the day, there are going to be people who suffer from that. And absolutely, I think there's an argument to be made that too many Americans suffer from a lot of those kind of chronic conditions. But the problem is not that they have them. And the problem is not that the pharmaceutical companies or anybody developing any of this stuff is making money. The problem is that they're price gouging us because of, again, the profit motive. We need to move to a system where if pharmaceutical companies, because they're companies at the end of the day, the profit motive is always going to be there. But we need to have a stronger hand. You're never going to get a company to create a drug, to distribute a drug, to market the drug, to do all of those things at a loss. They always need to make some of that money back. The argument for a Medicare for all system is so that every American comes together and argues, you are going to sell us that EpiPen for a fair and low fucking price, or you're going to get the fuck out and you're going to go out of business. You either do business with us at our expense or you don't do it at all. Or, I'm sorry, at your expense, or you don't do it at all. And when I say expense, I don't even mean companies going into the red. I just mean a reduction in their profits. Which again, like, keep in mind how much of their profits go to CEOs of these companies that absolutely don't need it.
Any seizure
don't
medication,
create any value whatsoever.
The insulin shots and all that, and they're making a killing. They make $500 billion a year, but it's not good for our country. And what we need is public health agencies that are actually focused on public health rather than advancing the pharmaceutical paradigm and profits for these.
Yeah, I don't really think I don't think that's. I'll be honest. I don't think that's really the problem that we have. Let's see. Oh boy. Nuclear power. Okay, I'm not. Let's see. Whatever. Border and immigration. Hit me with it. Okay, we're just. I don't think. Okay.
We've only got about 10 minutes.
Guys, yeah, that's how I feel. We are not going to get to these two, unfortunately, but we'll save them for Thursday. We'll have like a full show Thursday, so we might skip Choo Choo Charles just so we can fit everything. That and we're only at the boss fight, so.
Minutes left before I know you got to get out of here. One something we really want to talk about is the border, the current situation down there. How would you handle the current border situation?
It's all getting cut.
Preserve and keep the Remain in Mexico policy. What does an ideal asylum and immigration system look like under your presidency?
Fucking Jordan, man, looking through, I looked at his channel. Holy shit, dude only makes like 1.5 hour long videos. Like, I don't know how anybody consumes that shit.
First of all,
I'd love to see his average watch time.
A couple of weeks to talk to the stakeholders, the Border Patrol, the people on both sides of the border, and try to better understand it and better hone my policies to develop a solution that, first of all, number one, makes the border impervious. We cannot have people coming over, millions or hundreds of thousands of people coming over illegally. It's not good for our country. It's a humanitarian crisis on the border, and we need to end that. There are ways I know of doing it. I've heard many, many different ways, but I don't know myself. I mean, I know that Israel has not a wall, but it has fencing systems, and they have the same issue that we do with African immigration, and they've been able to stop and stop the humanitarian crisis. We need to look at this as a humanitarian crisis, and we also.
So quickly about immigration. Here, I guess, is my concern or my perspective on it, which is, what about immigration are we concerned about? That's number one. What do we think? Like, to this day, I'm not sure what the actual problem is. That the problem that's being created by, so-called illegal immigration. I just don't. Immigrants commit I think statistically less crime than natural-born citizens. They certainly have been stabilizing our economy in certain ways, picking up jobs, doing a lot of jobs that Americans and, quite frankly, business owners don't want to pay American prices for. So the question has to be, like, what is the problem here? Are we in more danger? Well, no, we're not. Is there an issue that our economy is having? Also, no, not really. So what is the problem here? Because if somebody's coming over the border seeking asylum, we have a system to adjudicate if that person should be allowed in the country, if they're fleeing from persecution, whatever, from dangerous situations, whatever it might be. We have a way of adjudicating that. So if we're going through that normal process, which, by the way, states like Texas and Florida are making it harder by shipping people off to New York and California and other blue states far away from their immigration hearings, which only gums up the process even more, because now they're stranded in another state. They're nowhere near where their hearings are supposed to be. That doesn't create any kind of operational efficiency. So the question always is, to me, like, what is the crisis here? These people aren't coming here and committing a disproportionate amount of crime. They're not coming here and destroying our economy. It's one of the factors that keeps our economy pumping in a consistent manner. Now, one could say, oh, well, Josh, the problem is that illegal immigrants come here, they get jobs, and because of their illegal status, they unfortunately drive down the wages of Americans. Totally correct. I'm with you 100%. Would you like to know how we solve that? We offer a citizenship program, and not like the one we have now where it's 5 years, it takes forever to actually get through, but one that's a lot more, quick and a lot more, efficient. But also, we need to be, we need to have the owners, the managers of any of these companies bear the cost of that. If you are caught hiring illegal workers, you are going to get hit with a lot of penalties, a lot of fines, whatever. You need to be punishing the people who are hiring those workers. They're aware that they're illegal. They know who they're hiring and why they're hiring them. So you need to attack. Like, what are you going to do attacking the poor immigrant who just came here and works at a meat packing facility? What are you gonna do to him? You're gonna kick him out, and then what? Some other guy's gonna plug into his position. That's all that's gonna happen. You haven't addressed the actual problem. What you need to do is push for higher minimum wages. You need to push for naturalization and citizenship of these people to get them into the system to then drive up wages. Because the minute you make that person a citizen, guess what? They have all the rights of everybody else. They now can get paid like everybody else. And now these workers who are necessary for the function of any meat packing, any of these farms, any of that stuff, now are going to be forced to contend with regular wages, which means the wages of their workers are going to increase. Like, there are ways to address the economic, the economic consequences of illegal immigration. But certainly none of them have, in my view, you're just barking up the wrong tree. You're bothering the regular guy who's working and adding value to the economy instead of putting pressure on the owners. This is frequently a tactic used by managers and used by corporate leaders, industry leaders, to pit illegal immigration workers, illegal immigrants who are workers, with regular, like, natural born citizen workers. Like, at the end of the day, what they want are these two groups of workers clashing and blaming each other for poor wages, for poor working conditions, for everything else and every other problem that they have in workplaces, instead of coming together, fighting for both people's rights, and in the process putting more pressure on those companies and gaining those rights for everybody else, for everybody, illegal and legal workers. But just putting pressure on the actual individuals has never been, I think, a feasible or efficient way of going about any of this.
We need to be honest about the U.S. involvement in the policies that created these huge migrations.
This is also true.
The decades of austerity programs that we've been imposing in Central America, of wars, of supporting dictators and oppressive regimes, of supporting genocides, of funding death squads in those countries, of trade agreements that were terribly imbalanced, that have created this migration. You look at the one country in Central America that we've never invaded is Costa Rica, and you don't see Costa Rican immigrants flooding to the border in the kind of numbers that we're seeing other people. Costa Rica today is the wealthiest country per capita in Central America. It's the only country that we have not tampered with. And all of these other countries, we funded these wars and death squads and everything else, and we need to change our policies.
So would you commit to lifting sanctions on Cuba and Venezuela? I mean, Venezuela is a source of a lot of migrants right now.
I would not have sanctions against Cuba or Venezuela.
Oh, my favorite thing, my more conservative family members will always mention Venezuela. They know absolutely nothing about Venezuelan politics. They wouldn't even, if I even asked them, they'd be like, what do you mean sanctions? I'd be like, yeah, there's a reason why their economy is fucked. It's because there's sanctions on them to be able to participate in the world economy. Like, that's why we've hindered their ability to participate, and because of that, their economy has crumbled. Not because of socialism, not because of any of this nonsense, because we, as usual, meddle in South America. You create instability, you're going to get instability.
Encouraging those countries and not bullying them. And I think people need to be able to choose their own governments. If they're killing people, if they're committing genocide, then I think we should be doing sanctions.
All right, let's see if we got like one more. Political dynasties, don't care. Oh no, we're not doing the 10-minute vaccine debate. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll do that on. Will you endorse? Ooh, interesting. Maybe we'll do that on Thursday. We can do the very specific vaccine and COVID debate. That it looks like. Yeah, that's like a 10-minute. That's like a 10-minute segment. I think I saw they have a separate video on that, so I want to watch that. But let's hear if he'll endorse Biden or not.
My final question for you is, do you plan to support whoever the Democratic nominee is? And do you have any intention of running third party if you're running the Democratic primary?
I plan on winning the Democratic primaries.
Okay, but
that's unfortunate.
They're rigging things. They're not going to allow debates. It's going to make it very difficult for you. So if something happens and you don't succeed, what then?
I do not have a plan B.
No plan B?
No plan B.
And do you plan to endorse, if Joe Biden is the nominee or Marianne Williams, do you plan to endorse the eventual Democratic nominee?
I doubt if I would endorse anybody who's supporting the war. I think that's what my,
So you could endorse
He's
Trump
talking about Ukraine.
I don't see that happening.
You would never endorse President Trump?
I don't. I think we have so many differences in style and approach that
not on policy?
I probably would never end up there.
All right. Well, sir, we appreciate your time.
Wow. So he's like a Ukraine guy. Okay. I want to look more a little bit into him as time goes on. Yeah, we'll definitely. Yeah, I want to hear this debate. God, Breaking Points is disappointing. Let's see. Can I I know that video was 2 weeks ago, so it shouldn't be super far to scroll. Hopefully. God damn, they put out a lot of stuff. Car market. Let's see. Oh, here it is. Vaccines. Okay, cool. Yes, this is what I want. Save. We'll do that. Cool. Yeah, I wanna hear that debate. I'm very interested in that. We will get around to watching these on we'll get to Tim Pool, we'll get to Peterson on Thursday. That's the rough plan for now. I don't think for the third hour, I'm thinking we won't play video games. We'll just do 2 straight hours of maybe we'll try to do like an hour and a half of each, like an hour and a half of just regular politics, and then we'll do the legally, we'll do like an hour and a half of the legally distinct fun half. But either way, I gotta run. You all have a lovely night. I should probably do the thing. If you've enjoyed any of what you saw, if you learned anything, if you got some catharsis, if you just like lurking in chat, I would implore you, I would ask for your support by hitting that follow button on Twitch, hitting that subscribe button on YouTube. Really helps out the channel, really helps out me. Like I said, next show will be on Thursday. It'll be 7 o'clock Mountain Time. Probably gonna do a 2-half show instead of a 3-part show. So look out for that. Otherwise, I think that's about it. Oh, you should also absolutely share this stream with any other people that you think would enjoy some of this content. That's also something you should do. Otherwise, I think that's it for me. I don't have any other programming notes for next time. Yeah, everyone have a lovely night. I will see you all Thursday. Goodbye.